All right, everybody, if we could have a seat. Welcome to the City Council workshop for the City of Bonnie Lake for April 4th, 2023. First thing we do is always salute the flag. If everybody could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mayor McCullough,
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Carter,
Here.
Councilmember Baldwin, Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Fullerton,
Here.
Councilmember McClymonds,
Here.
Councilmember Swatman,
Present.
and Councilmember Watson.
Here. All right. Do we have a motion to excuse Councilmember Baldwin?
So moved.
Second. Let's just take a vote. All in favor of excusing Councilmember Baldwin from tonight's workshop, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. That's been unanimously done. Now I will ask, where is Councilmember Baldwin still in D.C.? Or?
No, she returned, but was headed out of town.
Oh, okay.
She's back, but out of town.
And on that same note, I did have a request, and it is, certainly up to the council on this, but I have to be out of here by 7 o'clock because she's 17 today. Turned 17 today. Of course, she thinks she's turning 31, but she is 17, and we backed up the plans to 7 o'clock so that I could be here for at least an hour. So I was hoping that we would be able to address the utility issues before.
Talking about water and sewer tonight,
Yeah, water. Well, that's it. And I was hoping that we would be talking about water and sewer first, then open discussion later. Does anybody have an objection to going forward with sewer and water first? Okay, I see. I see people shaking their heads to not minding doing it. So let's do it. All right. That being said, let's just start with the review of the council minutes. Councilmember Watson.
There are no corrections. They're good.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to our discussion items for tonight. Ms. Ryerson.
What about you?
I'm stuck to a cord here, so I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
I can't get any more cord. It's stuck over there.
Oh, no, that one's only a certain length.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as you can hear me, we're good.
Well, it's budget constraints.
So what's that?
Afford more cord.
Okay. Perfect. Is that better? Obviously. So we've had a few meetings to talk about water sewer storm rates. And I'm presenting tonight the water sewer storm rates as presented by FCS. And I'd like to get your input on it, and hopefully we can come to an agreement and move this forward so that the citizens can receive a benefit on what FCS has presented.
Okay, do we have any discussion on the matter? Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, I was looking on page it's packet page 13, page 2 of 10, and it's looking at the 1.5 inch or larger of the meters. It says to be determined on an individual case based on the project amount of usage and peaking expected from the customer. These charges shall reflect residential
Equivalents.
Values used for the individual residential customer. So we could just go, hey, you have to pay $100,000 for this because we don't have any determined billing. So I think that for expectation, we should.
So this has to do with the SDC and not the rates. And it's the current language that's in the code right now. So we didn't ask for any change. Ryan can probably speak to that a little bit better than I can since it has to do with SDCs.
Yeah, so, as Sherry stated...
John Stone, your cord is still short.
Is it hey, there we go.
There we go.
There we go. As Sherry stated, that's language that's currently in the code. The projected amount of usage and peaking expected from the customer typically comes If it's a new facility of some kind, that's typically comes with the engineering design that the applicant hires in order to complete that. And so we would use that information. It's not something that we're arbitrarily deciding, although it is a value that we can check on our own if we feel there's something that's suspicious there that warrants a deeper look. These charges shall reflect residential equivalence values used for the individual residential customers.
Yeah, that's kind of a strange one, right? Because shouldn't it be kind of like a multiple or something? Isn't that what it is? The RE is something times whatever they established with the engineering of that particular use?
Yeah, so basically what we do is we establish a consumption value per capita in the city, and that equals typically to one residential equivalent. And then if you have, say, some place that's using, let's just use round numbers here. Let's say that value is 100 gallons per day per person. And then you have a business that comes in and they're going to use 500 gallons per day per residential, 500 gallons per day. That would be 5 REs because it's 5 times the 100 gallons per day per person value that was developed. And then that's used as the basis for figuring out the additional charge that we're talking about here.
So can't you add a calculation of this so if someone looks at it, they can have an idea what they might be charged?
I'd have to look at that further. I don't really know off the top of my head. You know, that I will say that it's hard to identify. It may be possible, but we usually stay away from that just because that value can change, the per capita value. From year to year. It's something that's captured in our water system planning documents. So we've just found over time that keeping the language generic, if you will, probably not the best word, and dealing it with it like it says on an individual case seems to be the most effective way.
Is there a way to just put like the base price and then have an additional for the REs?
Well, I think that's part of what we're talking about here, though, because we really don't know the base value because it's totally dependent upon the usage. Does that make sense?
But wouldn't all of them be dependent on the usage, whether it's for the single family home of the 5/8, the 3/4, the 1 inch, the 1 inch without sprinklers or with sprinklers, and then the 1.5? And I'm trying to figure out why the 1 inch without a sprinkler system is actually more than double what it is with a sprinkler system, because they'd be using more water, wouldn't they?
So thinking back to Chris's presentation, it just as a reminder, the way that this value is calculated is it's based on that calculation he showed us, which is present cost of the system plus future project cost divided by source capacity, right? So that's where the SDC value comes from. To be honest with you, I would have to look at, oh, thank you, you brought up his presentation.
CC, right?
Yeah. And bear with me for just a second.
And I know he mentioned that to me, that if you are wanting to put in some sort of calculation, it would be another additional cost. That's not something that was part of his assessment, I believe. And we've already spent, I believe, close to $85,000 on getting these evaluated. And so I would have to come back to council and ask for more money. We have, I think, $5,000 left.
Yes, our city attorney wishes to address.
Yeah, thank you. So, Councilmember Fullerton, if it's not a set amount, but it would have to still be justified and legal. As far as legally, we couldn't just make up something like, oh, it's a Costco. Let's, jack their price. They're a multinational corporation. It has to actually be related to what the amount of water they're using, the size of the meter, etc. So there is a formula for it, but it's so variable, and I don't know the base number, but I was looking at the system plan, and there's the former PowerPoint, and they look at the equivalent residential unit, they look at the meter size, they look at all these different calculations. So it would have to meet that, and when the developer brings forward, they provide the information so the city can calculate it. It's not just a made up number. So, and if they think it's too high, they have the right to challenge it, and we would have to justify it. So there are guardrails on it, if that's what you were worrying about.
Okay, yeah, that's great. As long as there's guardrails and they have the ability to come back and request a reevaluation, then that's good.
What was the differentiation between this fire sprinkler? I forgot on that one, because I know we had matched up the 3/4 and 1 inch so that there wasn't any difference when there was the required fire sprinkler systems. But then the 1 inch, and we're talking residential here, right? Still,
Looks like.
I forget why the 1 inch without the sprinkler system jumped up to the 13,000 in this particular instance. It was 20 versus 9. I don't know what it is, so Ryan probably doesn't know.
To be perfectly honest with you, I'd have to get back with Chris to get the answer to that question.
I forget how we got to, because the SDCs are very legalistic and they need to be very accurately represented to their methodology. They can be defended in a court if necessary for SDCs.
Do we have any
Also-
further discussion on
I'm
that?
sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chris Gonzalez also did review all 3 ordinances to make sure that I was presenting what he recommended. So he has reviewed them.
So, one of the, I don't know if, in reference to SDCs and SDCs only, there is some, I'm worried about not appropriately billing the new folks that are here that move into town, new additional people. Because if we don't appropriately attribute charges to those folks, and I know we kind of looked at that before a little bit, because we're proposing in this particular ordinance to go from 9,000 to like 5,000 or whatever it is. It's a significant drop in SDC fees. And that was based on the fact that 75% capacity exists or something like that. We're doing math here, and this is like troublesome, right?
So a big part of the decrease was the increase in the source capacity.
Yeah, because you guys looked at that a little bit or something when I was kind of mentioning that, hey, wait a minute, we didn't purchase that outright it's not it's peaking capacity, it's not full time.
You're talking about the TPU connection.
Right.
It's a wholesale water connection. I mean, it's available for use anytime.
Right, yeah.
And Mr. Johnstone, what does TPU stand
Oh, excuse me, Tacoma Public Utilities.
for? All right, good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion, Councilmember? No, let's go to Councilmember McClymonds.
Yeah, so I've looked a lot at this, and I think I've already shared it, that I'm kind of hesitant to the SDC calculation. Just seems to me like we're punishing people who moved here and bought houses, and we're asking them to pay more water rates, and we're giving people that are now coming in a better deal to help build the system. So it seems to me like we're putting an extra burden on people who are already here that already paid to build the system. And, I look at the calculations, and one of the questions I had was, with the TPU, right? If we did our approach to using Tacoma Water change the SDC, that was something I got while I was reading this again. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Is that one way that by increasing the equivalent units that it drove that down?
So obviously the source capacity is the denominator in that SDC equation, correct?
Right.
And if I remember correctly from Chris's presentation, 2008, it was a different source capacity value. When we included the source capacity of the Tacoma Point Utilities interconnection at the Prairie Ridge Booster Station, that increased our source capacity, which then yields you a lower overall number for the SDC value. But keep in mind with SDCs, it really is a device that provides an equitable way for everybody to pay their way into the system. It's set up to actually make things equitable because the burden for expansion of the system shouldn't necessarily be on the backs of the people who already are here. It should be paid for by the people who are coming in and driving that system expansion. So The SDC actually plays a critical function in keeping the water utility functioning and earning the revenue needed to be able to pay for itself.
So, in your mind, who's paying for the reservoir? Is it people who already moved here, or the people who are coming?
So the reservoir is a cost that's being paid for by everyone because it's not just serving new development. It's also increasing the amount of water available for fire storage, its equalization storage. There's multiple components of the water that's in a reservoir. Only some of that is actually for consumptive use. The others are for increased fire flow protection, equalization storage, as I mentioned, and some of it is dead storage. It's just water in there that will never get used. So the cost of a reservoir, that cost is rightfully borne by everybody who's connected to the system.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Fullerton.
So is the almost 13,000 for people without a sprinkler system, is that kind of to enforce people, or kind of encourage people to get a sprinkler system so that they can pay less than half or more than half of the amount? Is it like an encouragement to try to get people to, when they're building a new home, to put a sprinkler system in if they're having a 1-inch pipe?
I would have to talk to Chris to reevaluate that rationale and to be able to provide you an answer on that. I can't provide that answer right now.
It doesn't make sense to me because they'd be using less water.
All new homes required to have a sprinkler system, am I correct?
At this time.
A few years ago.
That's hopefully going to change because it's not necessary. A sprinkler system isn't going to put out the fire. It's not going to. It's already going to be damaged from all the smoke and everything.
Yeah, that's what's required right now.
Mr. Johnstone, didn't we touch upon that subject a couple of weeks ago?
We did. When the master builders came for a visit, we did indeed.
Okay, any further questions?
There,
Or any further discussion, I should put it. Councilmember Swatman.
no, and I don't know if the differential makes that much difference with the amount of houses that we're currently building, though, so plus or minus. There is a technical way to move stuff around because, as you recognize the denominator being recognized as a source of TPU, obviously, if we didn't have the TPU source, then you wouldn't have the issue with having to lower your SDCs for your new folks coming to town. But I think that's kind of technical and probably more difficult to do. So I don't know. I'm gonna be overall on the water thing with, I don't know where everybody else is going to sit, but I'm going to have to vote no on it for a variety of reasons on the water issue, but I don't fault anybody else for passing through.
And Councilmember Clemens, did you have another question?
Yeah, I think I have to ask what happens if I don't vote for this.
The rates don't change.
So the rates would stay as it is in the code. The SDCs would stay as it is in the code, and your water utility is in jeopardy of failing financially.
And
I can look and let you know tomorrow. I
And-
have it penciled out.
Question I have, Mr. Johnstone, is, and I will qualify that with, since we're talking math, I will let you stick with that. But as far as Mr. Gonzalez's presentation, and from an aggregate point of view, the rate structure with the water right now is basically what will allow us to have the 12% decrease with the sewer.
So, yeah.
I was going to say, actually, the rates between the two utilities are independent.
Yeah.
Okay.
One doesn't impact the other.
They are
All right.
independent.
That was my question.
I guess from a budgetary expert position, and I know Councilmember Swatman, you've talked about us giving our expert opinions. Mr. Gonzalez gave his expert opinion on SDCs and what would happen if we don't reduce the SDC rate. I think Jennifer, the city attorney, would also speak as to what will happen if we do not reduce the SDC rate based upon our consultant's recommendation. But in light of that, and Jennifer can correct me if I'm wrong, I would prefer an ordinance to pass with utility rates, keeping everything status quo on the SDCs and continuing to have further SDC discussions than just throwing out the entire ordinance.
Well, with regard to the SDC rates, you can certainly charge less than the math would present. But if you charge more than the math shows that you should, then you are putting the city at legal risk for someone challenging the connection fees as being excessive under the law. And I believe that Bonnie Lake had a lawsuit on that basis many years ago.
They did.
So I would certainly recommend that you don't charge any more than the math would.
Exactly.
Well, and our resident historian, Councilmember Swatman, who was more than likely on the council at that point, what was the result of that litigation? Do you know?
And we definitely lost that, and very accurately. Palermo versus City of Bonnie Lake. Go look that baby up. I think that was $2 million some odd dollars, whatever it was. Yeah. So yeah, you got to have your math. You got to have the math has to work. That's why I was referencing kind of changing what the denominator was, but not worried about that as much as I'm worried about the rates right now.
Okay, Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that the rates are being lowered. My concern was that we didn't have a price on the 1.5, and that we are charging more without a sprinkler. So that was my concern was, why isn't the with or without a sprinkler should be $5,194, not $12,986. So that was my concern, is that we were charging more for the 1-inch without sprinkler system. And so I was just trying to get to the bottom of why are we charging more? Is it an incentive for people to put a sprinkler system into their home, or is it,
We can certainly, like Ryan was saying, we can get Chris's justification on that for you. The other one isn't a code change, but we can certainly get his justification on both of those for you. As Jennifer said, if you want to reduce it to the 5194, you have the ability to do that as well. So,
Because nobody uses that anyway, so you can make it whatever.
And I'm just guessing. I hate to guess, but when you don't have a fire, one of the reasons that some cities require fire sprinklers, they put them in places where fire flow is not good. So that way it puts out the fire, and you don't necessarily have to have as much fire flow, because the fire is going to be out before you have to bring an engine there with a hydrant to put it out externally. I'm guessing that has something to do with it, but I know that Chris did all the math, and it's based on formula and what the draw would be, etc. And so I'm guessing, and we'll get you a direct answer, but I'm guessing that's the reason why.
Okay. Any further discussion on the matter? Councilmember McClymons.
Yeah, I don't remember if the council actually actively discussed the use of the loan, whether or not that had been debated completely. Had we done that? I thought that Council Member Baldwin was, questionable about that. I don't know where everybody else stands.
Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering on how the actual rates were structured, and what we were using, what we were not using in there, and because it kind of I don't know what did we settle on. Basically making it looks like we reduced the rates for the very high users or something like that.
So on Chris's last presentation, unfortunately the one that I had to watch after the fact, he had indicated that we would be able to reduce, I don't know if you recall, but when we started this, we were higher than 3%, or CPI, I'm sorry. And by obtaining that loan, we're able to manage the rates better. The discussion has gone back and forth on whether or not people were interested in the loan. But as you can see, it kind of, the theory behind the loan is that it spreads the amount over a larger period of time and all the users that it's going to be affected by that growth, right? So it's also able to keep your rates a little bit better under control. Many cities use loans, and the interest rate on this loan, 2.65. So you're not 2.5. You're not going to find a better rate. So again, professional opinion from both of us would be to move forward with that to keep the rates manageable.
Okay.
So the actual rates scenario there, if I could jump into there, that's what I didn't understand in the actual water rates. So the proposal looked like it, again, because it's like lined out with the 387 over 10 CFF. Was that the winter?
The structure.
Yeah, the actual
Yeah.
rate structure I was trying to figure out, because I think Councilmember Evans mentioned that at one point too about, the high users, the people that used a lot of water. And I didn't think we wanted to give them a huge break for using a lot of water, what it amounted to, but it kind of looked like the way it was written up, that was the scenario that they went to.
Yeah, so when we were initially presented to talk to FCS, you guys challenged us to eliminate the water rates in the summer and come up with a all year long structure.
Yeah.
So this is what Chris did, and this is his recommendation based upon that. Obviously, if you want to keep the structure, we can certainly keep the tiers, water, winter, summer rates. But this scenario is not keeping a water and summer rate. This is a year-long rate. As we've talked before, you need X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
It has to flow down to all of the people some way. So whether that's in a tiered for your higher users, or whether you have everybody pay an extra dollar, that's a council decision.
Well, yeah, but see, I don't know the way it's proposed, whether it basically, there's people that use a lot of water and people that use a moderate amount of water. There's a large portion of our users are just kind of the moderate users. And then there's a very small portion of users that are used like an extreme amount of water.
Yeah.
And it looks like we've taken the charges and made it lower for those small amount of people that use an extreme amount of water. And of course, as you note, revenue neutral, those charges would have to go back on to the other people that are using less water. And that looks like, and I don't know if I'm looking at it right.
Well, I included, I think you are. I included his presentation. So at the end of your packet, his presentation looks like it's page 50 of 72 of your packet. The rate structure is on page 51. And he shows there, just like he went over last time, kind of the theory behind it. And the page 52 would be the proposal.
I don't know where it is.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Fuller.
So it looks like on this page 50, if we pay as we go, then we're going to be at 5.5%. And then if we do the loan over time, it would be a 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so this scenario is with the 3%, and I believe it's actually CPI. I don't believe it's 3%, it's CPI. 5.5 is the actual rate. I believe below it, the 3% is whatever CPI is. But yes, we presented the option that accepting the loan in order to keep the rates lower.
would that, if we take a loan, would that stop increases?
No, that's the scenario that you talked about, alternate 3%, 3%, 3%. That's that scenario. It doesn't stop it because the loan is specific for the reservoir.
Mhm.
Yeah, for the reservoir. It's not going to help us maintain our ability to continue to operate without some sort of fee increase. Regular operations and maintenance.
Right.
One of the options that was I brought up last time too is if there is concern about the rate that our residential customers are paying and how that is being distributed and broken down, that you could look at raising the rates of other customer classes, which in this case would be your multifamily, commercial, or irrigation. And you could account for that difference that we're saying between our moderate water users and our high residential users by putting that cost back on those other customer classes, if you will. It's I only bring it up as it is a tool. It is something that could be used. I am neither endorsing or.
To clarify, though, I would need more budget money to be able to do so because Chris is essentially out of money
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
this project. So,
Sorry, Sherry.
yeah.
That's okay. And Ms. Robertson would Mr. Johnstone's just most recent proposal pass legal muster, given what you've said?
It
Oh, the
would.
rates, you
You
can-
can make your rates. You just have to make sure that they're rational and they're covering your operations. And absolutely, you can have different classes of customers. You just have to charge the classes of customers.
Well, I certainly appreciate the word rational over reasonable.
Actually,
Okay, Deputy Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think last time we went through this, I was pretty far against doing a loan. However, after I've been educated on it, I've come to the conclusion that it's not a bad deal and I could go for that. I like this, essentially moving the rates down, and that's what we all wanted to do, and also getting rid of the summer rate. I think that's all going to be very helpful, especially once we get to the monthly billing aspect of everything as well. So I think we're just totally moving in the right direction. It's not perfect, obviously, but I really am pleased with the way it's going. So I'll just say that, but I'm okay with the loan now too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Ms. Ryerson, when is our ETA on the monthly bill?
We actually they've already run a scenario this last month. They have a meeting on Thursday to discuss it, and then Ryan and I are meeting with them to see what our next steps are. So hopefully this week we'll kind of have an idea of how they did and if we ran into hiccups and what we can do to improve.
And are we going to have give our residents plenty of notice as to why
We-
this is happening? So
We are. Our idea was June, but now obviously we're kind of wanting to time it with the new rates and kind of have everything be a one-time push. So we will find out this week how their test went.
Well, not to give compliments, but I think Councilman Fullerton's idea, of being able to manage your budget was a great way to explain it. So it's all right. Any further? Oh, Councilmember Watson.
I agree with Deputy Mayor Carter that I like what we've got here to start. I like the loan. It's someplace we can start, and then as it going to next year, we can massage it somewhere if we need to.
Right.
So we need to go someplace and get going. And we said we'd try and lower the rates. This is lowering the rates for them, and then we can go from there. I mean, it's a great spot instead of keep just raising.
Oh yeah, but didn't I thought he had a couple of rate concepts, whether it didn't, push the charges onto the regular users from the extraordinary users. I thought there was a scenario there that was kind of like, there was two scenarios. There was like, oh, by the way, you can lower the 1,287 down to the 681, but you got to push that charge to the rest of the users somehow. I thought he had both in there.
I don't think he had another suggestion. I think he was probably saying if that's something you want, he can probably run those numbers.
Because there's extraordinarily small amount of those high-end
Yeah.
users. And I find it hard to believe that people would want to push the charges from those folks that are the ultra high-end users onto the regular users.
I presume you're looking at page 54. Is that what you're looking at?
Oh, I don't know, it's slide 24 or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, page 54 of the packet.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know where everybody's at on that. I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you want to keep the rate structure to be the black line, you're certainly able to do that. But you keep your summer rates, and your summer rates for the higher users obviously sometimes push upwards of $1,200.
sure, yeah.
So are we, by saying that the higher users are going to get more of a discount, let's say we're paying 50 cents per unit or whatever you call it, but if I use 1,000 units, then I'm going to pay 50 cents at 1,000. And then if Councilmember Swatman only uses 100, then he's going to be paying, his water bill will be less than mine because he's still paying 50 cents, but you used 100 units and I'm paying for 1,000 units at 50 cents. So technically I am paying more than you. It's just equal. The price hasn't changed, but I'm paying the same amount.
Problem is that water rates aren't linear. They're not, these folks that use an extraordinary amount of water, their water is more expensive than the average user.
Because we have to get it from Tacoma
No,
at some point.
because the way water is produced and stored and transported, that if the folks that want to keep their green lawns, and want to do that and want to pay and have the ability to pay those extraordinary charges that are out there currently, and they choose to do that, it makes my water bill more expensive. Because you want to use more water, I have to pay more. If you don't use as
Even
much
though you're
water-
only paying 50 cents
right,
and I'm paying 50 cents.
right.
How are you
It's-
paying more than me?
Because my water would be 40 cents if you weren't paying 50 cents.
Okay.
It's weird. I don't know, but it doesn't probably. It's like I just find it hard to believe that the council's going to pass an ordinance that's going to make it cheaper for 1% of the people and make it more expensive for 98% of the people.
Can that be fixed without
We
having
can certainly
to go through
implement
Chris?
we can continue to have the water rates in the summer be higher. That's certainly an option. That's the only
I
other
thought you'd
option
already,
that was looked
but I
at.
didn't want to spend any more money with rate analysis.
No. We can easily. I mean, we know what both options are, right? So we can easily remove that and bring the tiers back. Chris had
No.
already done that scenario.
Right,
Definitely
yeah.
not.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking say somebody uses more than 1,000 units or whatever it's called, then their rate would go up.
Mhm.
It already does. That structure already does. But I think what he's trying to say is, let's see. I see what you're saying, Councilmember Fulton and Councilmember Swatman. So basically, what he's trying to show is that we'll just come up with a number. We need $1,000 to run the entire utility, right? And if it's $1,000, you all have to pay your share of that. We're going to say you each are paying $100. I know the math doesn't work here, but just work with me. You each are paying $100, right? Well, you want to spend more. I still need that $1,000 to run my utility. And so he's saying, well, it's not fair. I'm spending less, but I'm still having to pay more because we had to raise his rate. So there is no real way to do that unless you're going to target these high users, which are summer users, watering the lawns. So you guys as a council kind of have to decide what your direction is going to be. Do you want to keep the structure the same and penalize the people that are watering their lawns with the summer rates? Or do we want to get rid of the summer rates and kind of normalize all the rates while increasing Councilmember Swatman's rate because he's still just saying, I want a brown lawn, and he's never used that much. So his rate now is, say, 50 cents, like he was saying, instead of what could have maybe been 40.
Well, given those examples and the hypotheticals, I think it does need to be pointed out, and we'd be remiss if we didn't, is the fact that, a lot of the words have been want and desirous. There are outside influences that are getting people to water their lawns more.
Sure.
Those would be
Yes.
homeowners associations who put pressure on you and
Fines.
ultimately fine you if you don't keep your lawn green. And there are residents in the city of Bonnie Lake who are under homeowners associations and some who aren't.
Yeah.
So that needs to be taken into consideration when it comes to the high water usage versus all of that. Now, obviously, that's not everybody. Some people just want to keep their lawns green, but that particular issue probably needs to be considered when it comes to adopting this. So, do we have any further discussion on the matter? Okay, Councilmember Kleinman.
Yeah, so I was looking at slide 49.
There is no slide 49.
Page 49.
Page 49? Thank you.
Right.
Water revenue.
Okay.
Yeah, so looking at that, that tells me that our OEM expenses out to 28 are under $10 million, right?
That's what we're projecting, yes.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Okay. Councilmember Fullerton.
Yeah, so if we're expecting on page 49 by 2028 that our revenue requirement is going to be 14 million, is this because of reservoirs and everything? So why are we not getting a loan based off of what we're going to need in 2028 so that we have all of the expenses covered, and then we just make all of the prices the same so that we don't have to keep raising the rates? We're not raising the rates because we took out enough money. That's like saying, oh, I need $100,000 right now to pay for expanding my house, but in 10 years I'm going to need $150,000. So why don't I just take out the loan for what I need so that I don't have to take out another loan and pay more interest, and then everything's covered, and then I can just do everything all at once.
So a couple of issues before Ryan starts. One, there are rules on funding that how long we have to spend it. So we can't take out a loan now at his great rate that he was able to secure for something he's not going to build until 2028. We aren't authorized to do that. They want to know that he's working on it, he's building it, he's got a plan, and we're spending it. It also comes with the cost, right? So his loan, we're going to have to pay for that. And the monthly fee on that is not cheap. We have loans that are $40,000 a year. We have some that are much higher than that. So what Chris did here was kind of try to show you, this is where you're at, what you're going to need. Sure, we can take out more loans as we go, and that's going to keep your rates more stabilized for sure. And that's something we can certainly discuss as Ryan brings more projects forward. He can certainly try to get more funding for future projects. A great possibility. It's not the same theory that the last council was using. So it's just a change in councils, change in what you desire. Not a bad idea.
Okay.
So let's change that to a good idea.
I support the loan. So I support your idea. We just can't get it today and hold on to it.
Okay. Anything further before we move on to our favorite sewer subject? Last thing I have with that is, as far as the action is concerned, Deputy Mayor, when can we get this on the council meeting agenda to actually open it up to citizen commentary before we vote on it?
And I would love to know if there's something you need me to change for the next meeting in regards to this, if the council direction is to change something or keep it status quo.
I would like to know if we can put the $5,194 regardless of whether you have a sprinkler system or not.
We'll get you that answer.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would look at it here in the future. I'm aware it needs to go through as soon as possible.
Sure.
But also I don't want to overload the agendas
Yes.
any of the meetings.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to our favorite subject, sewers. Ms. Ryerson, floor is yours again.
So I will actually turn the floor over to the council. I think I presented all three of them kind of at the same time. No real surprises here. Went with Chris's suggestion, and he was suggesting 12% decrease for 23-24, and then CPI after that, I believe it is. Trying to find the page.
Is that 63? Slide 33?
No, I'm actually looking for the ordinance on the sewer one. Here we are.
The ordinance.
Yeah, CPI. So downwards adjustment for 23-24, and then CPI for 25 forward.
All right. Any discussion on the matter?
I seen something in there that went to 11 or whatever at some point, right?
What's that?
Add the CPIs and then you went to an 11%.
No.
11.5. Did I misread something? Which page it was on now? Lots of pages. One of the questions that came up about the sewer, of course, and I don't know, we don't obviously have answers for it because I always pick on sewer, right? Our sewer charge is significantly different than what a resident of Sumner gets charged. And, I don't know what the differential there's probably a little bit of a transport charge associated with us having multiple lift stations, but it's unclear to me why there would be such a difference between that, right? So I don't understand why we wouldn't have the philosophy to be able to, we don't set rates arbitrarily. They're based on what you need to service the system, but yet a Sumner customer is paying a lot less, what it looks like, from what I see, than the Bonnie Lake customer does.
Yeah. And
Seems
Ms.
to me that
Robertson,
Sumner's
that relates back to the interlocal agreement that we would be having with Sumner, and which is, I believe, from 2012, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And have we made any progress on contacting them to try to finagle that?
We are working on it. I think there's been some high-level staff discussions, and we're moving forward with that. I recall Mr. Johnstone saying, though, about the sewer system is our sewer system has a lot more components.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Has a lot more components and a lot more elevation changes, meaning more pump stations and such than Sumner does, which I'm certain is part of the reason that the rates are different.
But there's significantly, of course, you don't know the fees, but that's why I was always trying to figure that out, because it's not like, oh, they're another dollar. It's like they're $10 a month or whatever they are, differential.
But this ordinance takes the rates and moves them downward effective July 1st by 12%, and then they're fixed until the end of 2024 when they start going back up by CP.
And just to add to that a little bit, Jennifer's correct. I've met with the Public Works Director down there, and Sumner is working on a draft version of the ILA to send up to us to begin review. One of the items that we'd like to do as part of that is a cost of service analysis to actually see what it is we're paying per unit to have our wastewater treated down there, and then evaluate that compared to other entities that have the same type of arrangement. Is it in the ballpark? Is it not? So that's something that you can expect to see move forward at some point. And as Jennifer was saying, the biggest differentiator is the utility systems themselves. We have a bigger utility system. Our collection system is bigger. There's many different components. We've heard it all before, but the 26 lift stations, Sumner, I think, has 5. There's just significant differences, and the comparison between two utility systems is never truly an apples to apples unless you do a lot of work to make it that way, and that's really hard to do. So, when you look at our city's base fees for sewer, they are high, but that base fee is there because of the larger system that requires additional maintenance. You want to make sure that you have that steady source of income to make sure that you can cover your maintenance and operation maintenance and operation requirements year round, because as people use water, their consumption changes, the bill that's charged to them changes, and that impacts what they get charged for sewer. So you can't strictly just program your rates revenue based on, you can't just program how much revenue you're going to have strictly based on the rate. You have to have a base fee that's going to meet a minimum requirement, minimum revenue requirement.
Mr. Johnstone, based on your inside knowledge, do you know if it's our former city prosecutor that's actually working on the ILA?
I don't know that, actually. I'll find out.
All right, Councilmember Fullerton.
So with the 26 lift stations that we have, does the maintenance on those lift stations go toward the sewer bill, or is that part of the water bill?
No, they are completely independent. They're completely independent. These are two distinct utilities, and there is no crossing of revenues or expenditures.
Okay, well then that doesn't make sense why we're paying double what Sumner's paying then. I mean, other than We just need to renegotiate something.
Oh, well, that's a component of the sewer charge, though, right? So, because you
Okay.
basically have the treatment charge, which we pay our appropriate share of, supposedly, kind of down there, which Ryan was referencing the cost of service down at the plant. And then we have the getting the sewer there and all that infrastructure to get it there. I thought they had
Which
like
is the lift
12 lift
stations.
stations, though, but
I'll count them for you.
We definitely have more lift stations and much more complicated lift stations, but that's what I was trying to figure out. It looks like there's too big of a differential there, but can I have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So on page 1 of 3 of the ordinance is where I was referencing the charges there, because they added in there from 2024 to 2028, rates set forth in A and B increase 1%
I'm sorry, Councilmember Swatman. You said 1 of 3, but what would the agenda packet?
Agenda packet, page 28 of 72.
You're looking at the storm.
Is that the storm?
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
storm.
one, isn't-
Yeah,
that's-
11.5 is storm.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so go back to page
Yep,
24.
we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought I was reading that. Yep. That's fine. Thank you.
So I'm not hearing any recommended changes on this one. Surprising, not surprising. We'll try to move them all forward at the same time. And not to steal your thunder, Mayor, the storm rates, now we can discuss those, Councilmember Swatman. The biggest difference here, there is a little bit of discretion that you guys have. I went ahead and presented it with the 11.5% rate. Obviously 11.5% on the charge of the $15, I believe is the rate currently, is not huge, but you have the ability to reduce this rate should you choose to use some of the ARPA money towards this. Ryan and I talked. We can't use, or we don't recommend using all the ARPA money towards the storm. We recommended about, I think it's 1.4 million to go towards stormwater. And then we can essentially reduce your rate probably down to about 80%. I'll have to verify with Chris, but
And to clarify for the record, what percentage of that of the ARPA funds would it be?
so we received 5.9 million. We have left about 4.9 million, I believe. So about a quarter of what we have left would go towards the stormwater.
I was just testing your mathematical.
You're just testing my autistic skills here.
That's a good idea.
Don't start calling me Rain Man, though. So from there, if you choose to use some of that ARPA money, I have some ideas to move forward with the rest of the ARPA, which hopefully we can get to in May or June as well.
I appreciate you moving that forward, Ms. Ryerson. Okay, any further discussion on the matter?
Is there questions on storm and whether or not you want to try to use ARPA so that I can adjust this ordinance?
I was going to say, yes, I like the idea of using ARPA funds for
I agree.
that issue.
Okay. I will present a modified ordinance for next time.
Thank you. All right, so let's move back then. I believe this would start with the council open discussion. And on that note, considering I do need to, I forgot to factor in travel time on this, so I can be there at 7 o'clock. I do hand the metaphorical gavel over to Deputy Mayor Carter.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you. It was a wonderful discussion tonight. I will see y'all later.
So, open discussion.
Good job.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway, Councilmember Fullerton.
So, let me find my notes here. Last workshop, we had a gentleman who was sitting in the audience and he wasn't able to speak because we don't have open mic. So he approached me afterwards. He was here at a council meeting. Him and his wife came last summer and they were speaking about their property being damaged because of people parking their boat trailers in their neighborhood and that they were littering in their yards and everything. So he asked the question because I did bring up making signs. And he said, when would you be able to make the signs? When would you be able to post the signs? Can we get the signs? And so he was asking about the no boat trailer parking signs that could be posted and then have like maybe a large fine for violators, so then we'll get some revenue there if people violate
Like a public
parking.
safety discussion. That's where it come from. So
Because that's creating a
Great
zone,
idea.
right? It was a no boat parking zone.
Like a CDC discussion.
No, it's public.
Public safety.
Public safety, do they want it to school district?
Well,
We did a long time ago. Yeah.
Oh, that was
our
okay.
attorney, our city
I don't mind
attorney
doing it. I just
said
want to make
that,
sure we weren't.
that
police,
we would
you know,
have
it's
to
a
make an
police
ordinance. Our city attorney, Jennifer, said that we would have to make an ordinance to
Right.
create
Each one we time they do that.
that area. So he was just kind of excited to hear that there might be a possibility of putting a sign in the neighborhood.
No boat parking zone kind of thing.
Yeah, you can create an ordinance, as I said previously, and that ordinance, once it takes effect, it wouldn't actually be enforceable until you actually had the signs fabricated and posted. I don't know that I got direction to bring forward an ordinance, so it's not on my work plan right now, but I could, if it's council's wish, I can certainly add it to my work plan and bring something forward. I don't know how long, maybe Mr. Johnstone would have an opinion on how long it would take once it's passed we'd have to probably do outreach to people, let them know you can't park there, and then we'd have to fabricate and post the signs. I'm not sure how long that would take. But if the council directs, I could certainly bring forward an ordinance.
Still waiting for signs for my trail. So
Could we,
Councilmember Evans.
could we just simply take the one that we have at the high school and modify the streets?
So I think the ones you're talking about at the high school are for the RPZ that's put in place over there.
Yeah.
I don't know about the feasibility necessarily of modifying those signs unless we were to go with another RPZ. in
I
that
just meant the
area.
legislation more so.
Oh, I said like the ordinance.
Yeah, the ordinance, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You could either do an RPZ, but then you want to make sure that you communicate with the people that live there so that they can get their passes so that their
Oh, that's
cars
right,
aren't
yeah.
ticketed. So you can do that, or you can just have it be a no trailer parking area, and you'd have to define, an ordinance would have to define the streets on which it applied. I mean, that was where I would need direction from your staff to define where it would apply, and then we would just have a no trailer parking signs, and the code would be cited on them. Kirkland has
Yeah.
that in some of their streets around a boat launch.
As chair of public safety, I'm fine with that being presented to public safety at a upcoming meeting. I don't know how to go about anything beyond just suggesting that right now.
So that's the will of the council to bring forward an ordinance. Okay, I will add it to my work
I
plan.
would say yes.
I would
All right,
work
got
with
it.
Chief and Ryan on which streets and the logistics of it all.
And then the other question that I had, well,
Hold on.
sorry.
Chief, were you wanting to say something? It looked like you were.
Yes, I was just going to say that I think it was the gentleman that lived on 194th. His is more of parking, not boat trailer parking. We didn't have a whole ton of people parking boat trailers. It was just people parking, overflow parking from the park that was leaving garbage in his yard. It's right off of Bonnie Lake Boulevard there. We didn't see a lot of boat and trailer parking last year. I think if it's the same gentleman I'm aware of, it's just parking in general, overflow when the park gets full.
Oh, he mentioned to me, because we were in a hurry because we were having to go into the executive session. So he was trying to get my attention real quick, and he said specifically boat trailer.
Did he give you his address by chance?
No.
Okay. Well, we can work with Ryan. We can look at both, but I know if it's the gentleman that was here on 194th, his is more of just a general parking issue. So, but we can work with Jennifer to do both.
But if we are, I
Both
mean,
covered.
obviously we were having problems with boat trailer parking, people parking in neighborhoods last summer.
Not boat trailers. No,
Oh, really?
we didn't.
Okay.
I want to say maybe one or two that our officers came across. Definitely, though, with vehicles parking, overflow parking in neighborhoods, that seems to be the bigger issue. And there may have been one time when there was a trailer parked. I can't remember where it was, but we got it out of there fairly quickly. But we didn't have a huge problem with boat trailers last year. It was more parking in general, the overflow parking.
And that should be solved with the new parking lot, hopefully,
Maybe.
or made worse.
Maybe so.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, and
Something
then
else.
I got an email from a gentleman on Inlet Island about the speed limit being changed. So I guess that would be public safety also from 25 miles an hour to 15. But I've never heard of a 15-mile-an-hour zone anywhere.
We'll let you head that up.
Is that a private street?
Yeah, Inlet Island, the whole entire island is 25 miles an hour apparently. So it's only 20 by the park. But concerned about safety because they don't have any. They don't have any sidewalks or any shoulder on their streets, and so they have families and kids that are walking from the bus stops, and he said that he did a test where he was driving 25 miles an hour and did a fast brake stop and then one at 15, and he said that the distance, the braking distance was much better at 15.
It's better at 1 too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like
15 times better.
Chief Jeter.
Probably along.
Okay. Then my question's answered. We don't need to put that on the agenda.
Never mind. Any other open discussion? Councilmember Watson.
Thank you. This weekend is the Easter egg hunt. Now it's going to rain like crazy out there probably, but I go every year and it's a great turnout. I mean, they can use some help down there getting the eggs put out.
Where,
and other
Tom?
prizes.
Where
Allen
is
York
that?
Park.
It's Allen York?
Allen York Park.
Every year?
Every year.
Easter egg hunt?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
should show up sometime.
What time?
It starts at 11 o'clock and the eggs are all gone by 11:05. But they could,
Yeah, they do too.
you could get there from between 9:30 and 11 to help get the eggs put out and hand out prizes, which is a good time. I have found talking to the parents around there, you find a lot about what's going on in the city and good conversation. Other kids are milling around the whole area looking for their eggs to pick out to win those. So, and we also had a donation from Toysmith, another of $2,500 this year of toys for us out there. That was a great donation.
Nice.
I discussed this at CDC today, but I had a tour with Todd Bright and Kramer with the new ball field. And it's a beautiful field. If you haven't been down there yet or got with Todd about that, you should. It's great, but we're going to have a lot of challenges this summer. If we don't address them as soon as possible. Like I know they discussed cameras down there, security or locked areas. The ball field is gorgeous, but like I mentioned before, if someone takes a spray can of paint out there, it's going to be tough for us to fix it out there because it's all, I didn't realize it's like a regular carpet out there. I thought it was more of a solid thing that we could keep clean. It takes maintenance all the time, as they talked about. But it's impressive what we got. It's a lot for us to do. So I hope as a council we look at ways to address some of these in the near future before it gets too far out of hand for us. But you should tour it, though, if you haven't been there yet. This Thursday, CFF, you are able to come down. It'd be great to see what's happening down at CFF. As you may be aware of, Councilman Evans and myself attended the Citizens Academy a couple weeks ago. We both went through the entire academy 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. The city changed the date from not Tuesday nights to another night, so council members could attend. So in the future, if you're able to go to that, for those, it's very informative, enlightening. You see what all the officers do, especially if you're not involved in police. It's good. It's a good place to talk to all the officers too. They all come there at different nights. They all show up. We had a great time that night talking to officers and people that were there, participants. So this academy is a great thing to go to. And we went to Sergeant Ron's retirement this last Thursday. 22 years at the department. He's our firearms expert. Great job. Lou's a good person, but it's good for both Councilman Emmons and myself to be there and say goodbye to him. Stuff. He's done so much for us. And the Citizens Academy is always there. And the night we went, he was doing talking that night too. So a lot going on. You can see what's happened in the city. It makes a big difference in maybe your decision making that way too. What do you think?
Very nice.
Okay, that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilmember Swatman.
Yeah, thank you very much. To follow up on Councilmember Watson there, yes, the field will be coming online later on in April, hopefully, or something like that. The new field, which is Field 5 currently. So, and he's exactly right. There will be a lot of interesting things that we flow through there to maintenance-wise and security and all those kind of issues that we'll have to keep an eye on as we move forward. And of note, of course, the ordinance is coming forward that came out of CDC that'll be addressing the charges for that field because they are significantly different. There's significant different uses out there, time in, stuff like that. So staff went through and modified an ordinance to appropriately charge, kind of rateable. It'll probably have to work through it a couple of times, a couple of years, but it's, it's not $5 a day to rent that field. It's more like, whatever it is, $20 an hour or something like that, $50
It's
an hour.
$140 to rent the field for 2 hours.
Period, yeah. So,
At night.
exactly right. It's significantly expensive, and it should be because it is a quality field. And what did I also have? Oh, and as mentioned, we also had the individual here that was asking about the intersection of Church Lake and West Haps, right? The T over there after you come to the park that everybody's been looking at, the bad sight distance and all that kind of stuff. Again, the staff recognizes that. They're moving forward. A recommendation out of CDC for an intersection analysis, one of those ICE type of analysis that we're going to recommend to the council for consideration so that they can have that pre-work done, because they also, kudos to staff to recognize some federal funding that could be out there and different funding sources that, require all that documentation to analyze those intersections.
And Angeline.
Yeah, and Angeline, it's part of, those things. They're just long term. The people come here and they say, yeah, that's a bad intersection. And obviously, many of us know that is a bad intersection, been a bad intersection since how long, forever, right? So they're working on that, but it'll be great to see when it comes forward. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilmember Fullerton.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Swatman. That piqued my brain. So I was wondering about South Prairie and 214th heading east. There is no left-hand turn lane there, and I traveled that around 5 o'clock one night, and I got stuck at 3 lights just because one person was trying to make a left-hand turn there to go towards Safeway. And you can't go around because there's other people that are turning left, coming westbound. So they're going south. And if you try to go around, which I watched a car go around the person that was trying to turn left and go straight, and the person that was turning left almost hit him. So, I mean, that is a dangerous intersection. And so,
if I might, that intersection is in the county. There's not much we can do about that. I believe they are moving forward with maybe looking at a roundabout in that location. I think I had heard that a while ago, but I can't remember where I heard that. But
They changed the lines here about 6 months ago, but there's not enough room on that one side she's talking about to put an extra turn lane is a problem.
Yeah.
They changed the lights and they did everything else. They couldn't fix that one side of the street, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
Set up right now. And they probably need more work because of the roundabout coming later on.
I didn't realize that was actually Pierce County.
Yeah.
As soon as you get, I think, all the pavement or whatever it is.
Yeah, just the
whole
roads
thing.
right there. Yeah.
Huh?
Just the roads right
Just
there.
that road.
Yeah, well, it's both roads in that spot.
That sharp corner is actually grounded for right of way for the county for their signal.
Okay. Well, it'd be nice if they could fix it. Can we send them a letter?
Agreed.
Next time
You're-
Dave's here, you can
you're-
read it.
yeah, absolutely. Any other open discussion? All right. With nothing, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, Brian?
Wasn't bad.
That's good.
The mayor's not here.
I have a question. Okay.
Brian or
Ryan.
Ryan, yes.